Question for short debate. Steps being taken to celebrate the success of national women's sports. Lord Addington.
My Lords, it is no secret as to why I brought this forward. It's the fact that we've actually had a long run of great success. Unfortunately, as somebody who no sooner cheers for Scotland than mainly by English teams, but our national teams have actually enjoyed, in the team games that were originally thought to be male-dominated, a tremendous run of success, which we have all seen. Now, the Euros was an odd one, because suddenly football, for me, a hardened rugby union player, became an enjoyable thing to watch, not only because you had a team you could relate to that was successful, but also for the sheer joy they seemed to have in the competing in that success. My Lords, who would have thought that a song brought out in 1969 by Neil Diamond would become belted out with such a great gusto and everybody would join in on? Come on, Sweet Caroline has become an anthem for British sport. So, and if this was done because a group of players, female, enjoyed and enlivened their success. It engaged the vast majority of us in a way we didn't expect. It's been backed up, this is a little bit bittersweet, by a rugby union team which had 30 consecutive victories at international level. 30, my Lords. I don't know how many records that's broken, but it's magnificent. And that's the England Rugby Union team. If we can't celebrate this degree of success with better grace and embrace it a little bit more than we've done so far, I think we are going to be in trouble. The whole structure of sport is one that encourages people to take part and enjoy in this. So what are we doing to get the best social and health and emotional health benefits from this? This is something which I am asking the government about. How are we going to do this? And also, what did we do to allow that success to be seen? Well, the first thing we did was we made sure that it was all on free-to-air television. If either of those tournaments had been tucked away in even the most brightly lit corner of a streaming service, the vast majority of the population wouldn't have seen it. It had to be something that the BBC and ITV, particularly in these cases, have actually taken out and said, here it is. And it's the warm-up to it, not just the events, my Lords. Women's football has actually been seen mainly by the BBC, but has been available for a long time. We've seen it. If you didn't see it, it doesn't really matter for any form of public entertainment or engagement if it's going on. Rugby union having, for the first time, the women's competition in standalone tournaments when you can watch it has been massively beneficial to actually getting people engaging in it. Now, my Lords, why does this matter? If you are getting the women and girls to actually think that sporting activity is normal, you can encourage them, more of them, to take part in it. It's not a totally closed book because they're out there now. But most of the cliches and stereotypes which have stood against female participation are thus addressed. You're going through and you're making sure people can get out and get involved. How do you access this and encourage people to do it? Well, you start at school, my Lords. You start at school, hopefully, by having a smorgasbord of opportunities to try. You encourage them to get out there and enjoy things, enjoy the sports that are going on. But, my Lords, the thing about school is you leave it. And people drop out of sport, generally speaking, post-16, post-18, post-21. When they leave this controlled environment where you are, to an extent, made it easier for you, or encouraged to, indeed forced to, take part in sport when you leave that environment. So what do we do to break that down? My Lords, you encourage them to try sports, hopefully ones which are culturally available to them. For instance, if you're talking about codes of rugby, I suspect in St Helens Rugby League might be your first port of call, and this might be the first opportunity to celebrate that other bunch of Lionesses who could get into the semi-final of that particular tournament. My lords, you have to make sure it's culturally available to you for your background and the groups you're going out to. And then you must encourage people to go from the club, the school, to the club. The small amateur clubs. The big professional, international, shiny stuff doesn't really matter that much for the benefits in society if you don't get people taking part in these games on a voluntary amateur basis. Because, my lords, in this country, government is very, very lucky that we have a tradition of sports clubs founding themselves, looking after themselves. Sport does a lot. Government helps, but primarily sport helps itself. That's why they're there. That's why, for instance, local government finds itself assisting football clubs with their grounds, not providing all of them as they do in most of Europe. That is something which the government should be encouraging. And one of the easy ways of doing this is making sure there's an effective link between school and club activity. You get better coaching, you get an idea that you can carry on afterwards. I hope this will be encouraged. Now, for women and girls, this might mean expanding the traditional sort of bill of fare. We've just spoken about two sports which are not encapsulated in the traditional diet of netball and hockey, although they should both be represented. And indeed, both those sports have had their degree of success, but possibly if we televise them all, we might be doing them more a little bit of favour. But that's maybe a debate, taking the debate a little bit too far down one angle. My lords, how are we going to encourage and in challenging this, making sure that offer to take on these things in later life is done? That is something which we really have got to do more on. School sports partnerships took a step in that direction. Whether they were totally all-encompassing and fully enough working that through, I don't really know, because they got stopped when they'd only just started getting going in most cases. Can the Minister give us an idea of what they're going to do? And then to return to probably one of the things which I think government really should do more of, that is to celebrate better team sports generally. My lords, we have an odd position here that we have handed out honours and awards like toffees for people who've had modest successes. My lords, it was great back in those heady days when England won the Ashes for the first time, but they should have beaten Australia before it. And the fact that everybody got a gong at the end of it, even if you sat on the bench, you got a gong, whatever the correct term is in cricket, others will correct me later. My lords, you're going through this, and then England rugby win the World Cup, great, everybody gets a gong. England women as amateurs in 2014, and this is now the policy, as amateurs, the definition is you pay to play, not you are paid. You give up time, effort, and put money in. When they won the World Cup, and they are much more consistent about getting to finals, etc., than the men, when they won the World Cup, 2 of them got medals. 2. My lords, did the person who devised this for a team game, have they ever actually watched a team game, let alone participated in it? Don't goalkeepers and defenders count in football? Or the people who do the hard work to win the ball in rugby count? Or was it only the glamour boys? I speak there as a person who was definitely in one of the Grunt Brigade. My lords, this is the sort of thing which government could very easily do. If it upsets some weird table of achievement or giving out awards, give 1 medal to the entire team and give them a copy of it. That's a way out. The example I would give you to that, what it's been done, is the equestrian teams for eventing. There used to be 1 medal, now they give them each 1. Still counts as 1 medal. These are the things which government can do easily. Also, my lords, I know the government had a lot on its plate this summer, but the fact you didn't have an official reception for the Lionesses, come on. There was enough of government left to celebrate that better. Why didn't this happen? And I think you could probably do it now and nobody would lose any brownie points for being late, for having a party late as opposed to not having it. My Lords, as the clock beats me, I would like to say that I thank everybody for taking part and hope that the government will be able to answer my questions and the other thoughtful ones I know are coming. I beg to move.
My Lords, may I firstly congratulate Lord Addington both on obtaining the debate and his very erudite and detailed analysis of the circumstances in relation to women's team sports over the recent years. I intend to, as would be natural, as with Lord Addington, to concentrate on rugby union and leave football to Baroness Taylor and others. I will start by making the observation that tomorrow evening my rugby club, the King's Cross Steelers, will be celebrating on the terrace here their victory in the Worldwide Gay Tournament, the Bingham Cup. Now, in itself, that victory is not relevant. But what is relevant is that we will have 3 members of the England women's rugby team present: Shauna Brown, Ellie Kildunn and Sadia Kabea. But I use the word honoured because their very success in recent weeks has caught the attention of the nation. And I would say to Sarah Hunter, as captain, on behalf of the whole team, not only have you caught our attention, but you've gained our respect. And we all know how difficult it is to accept defeat, and such a close defeat at that. But you have gained our complete respect. And why? Well, when I told my members that we were going to have 3 members of the England women's team present, the reaction was a communal, wow, that's great. Because for the first time ever, because of television coverage and the like, the rugby union team has attracted our attention in the same way that the football team has done. But why has it attracted our attention? Because, let's be honest, with the level of professionalism that we now have, and it's rising and can go on rising, the skill levels in the team sports have risen. And therefore, nobody dismisses them now and says, oh, well, it doesn't matter. They're just there playing rugby union, football, cricket, rugby league, whatever. There is a skill level now available which everybody can and should appreciate. I had the pleasure, along with a number of other members of both this House and the other place, of pressing the government for funding for the Women's Rugby World Cup in 2025. I was pleased that the government granted that assistance. Now, in Auckland, a week ago, the stadium was full to 40,000, its maximum capacity. The RFU has set a target of filling Twickenham with a capacity of well over 80,000 for the final in 2025. And it's a great target, and it should be achieved, and it is a reflection of the growing interest which is being displayed across the nations in women's sport. But as Lord Addington said, while we can admire the achievement, we can admire the increased professionalisation, we can admire the increased skills, what we have to do is recognise that it isn't a total success story. Lord Addington and I, with Baroness Gray-Thompson and others, served on a committee. We looked at the statistics in relation to activity levels. Those activity levels amongst women are 10% on average below male activity levels, and they are markedly lower amongst certain socioeconomic groups and ethnic communities. Those are the people who need to be able to be attracted by the performance of women in team sport to generate an interest on a day-to-day level, at a day-to-day basis, at a lower level in sport in general, because role models are not the only solution to achieving participation.
My Lords, I too congratulate Lord Addington on getting this debate and share with him the pleasure in the recent successes. What I want to emphasise, however, is that we should always bear in mind that national success of this kind is actually built on the grassroots activities that underpin them and that are so important and so common throughout the country every weekend, and I think that's very important. As Lord Hayward says, my particular interest is football. I make no apologies for that. Though, as a good northerner, I should say that women in rugby league, although they're not in the final on Saturday, do deserve some credit for giving that game a much higher profile. And I think that they need recognition for what they've achieved over the last few weeks, especially when they're not even fully professional. Football has seen remarkable changes recently in terms of public perception of the women's game. And I think it really is quite remarkable how we have seen attendances at football matches, women's football matches, really go through the roof, over 50,000 on some occasions. And I think that Lord Addington is right to say that having free-to-view television has been an important factor. But I think that this weekend there will be a large number of people tuning into paying to actually watch women's football on television, partly because there's no Premier League, but nevertheless that is a significant breakthrough. And another breakthrough is the number of women commentators, not just on women's football, but on all football. And so I think we have made some successes there. But as I say, it's the grassroots that have built up to this success. I would mention AFC Bolton ladies team, who are self-funding, as I've said, but who have had real difficulties post-COVID. And I think that the government needs to consider these small clubs in light of what's been happening there. And I would like to make a special mention of a special group of women football players, the pioneering Manchester Corinthians of Fog Lane Park, who, not least because they were founded by a scout from Bolton Wanderers in 1949, but who really made breakthroughs and actually were the first women's team to represent England at an international level and actually beat the Germans, just to mention it. And they even played in front of 50,000 people in Benfica. This was when the women's football was actually banned. And it really is incredible that it was not until 1971 that women's football was recognised as even existing. It really has been an uphill struggle, and a lot of that struggle was conducted at that very low level. So I do hope that the Corinthians can get the kind of recognition for their past history that they want. But all is not well and easy, because there was a report out just yesterday by sports scientists highlighting the lack of football kit that's actually designed for women, and therefore women have more injuries of certain kinds because there hasn't been that recognition. So whilst we're celebrating the success, and in particular I would celebrate the success of the Lionesses, 26 games undefeated, winning the European Championship, providing that role model, I think I agree with Lord Addington that a reception would be very nice, but I think that the Lionesses would rather they had the legacy of the government actually making sure that football was available for every girl and every woman to play, with the kind of support that is necessary to make that success continue into the future.
I too congratulate my noble friend Lord Addington for obtaining this debate and for opening it in such a thoughtful and constructive manner. In the short time allocated, I will concentrate my remarks on one specific area, that of the benefits of involving women, both in custody and those on the cusp of the criminal justice system, in sport. When I became Minister of State for Justice in the coalition government in 2010, and later chair of the Youth Justice Board for England and Wales between 2014 and 17, I instinctively assumed from my own experience that sport would play an important part in diverting young people from the criminal justice system or helping in rehabilitation once they were within it. The advice I was initially given was that there was no evidence that sport participation could play such a constructive role. I spent my 7 years at the MOJ actively searching for such proof. Fortunately, over those years, there were individuals and organisations who helped change attitudes to the importance of sport in our criminal justice system, not just for boys, but for girls and women too. There was the groundbreaking research by Professor Rosie Meek of Royal Holloway, University of London, in a report for the Ministry of Justice, which reviewed sport and youth in youth and adult prisons, which was published in 2018. In her foreword to that report, Professor Meek said this: "Evidence confirms that sport can play a huge role within our criminal justice system, as well as a way of bringing rather disparate groups and develop communication skills and learn life lessons. It is also the advantage of being something many people are passionate about." I was also encouraged by James Mapstone, co-founder and chief executive of the Alliance for Sport, and I was also given great encouragement by a member of my Youth Justice Board, now Baroness Sater. I look forward to her remarks later in this debate. Protocol prevents me from referring to her as my noble friend, but perhaps I can refer to her as my partner in crime. She is now a co-chair of the All-Party Group on Sport and Physical Activity in the Criminal Justice System, along with Clive Efford MP, with James Mapstone of the Alliance for Sport providing the secretariat, and with Rosie Meek as an advisor. So I'm confident that we can keep up the pressure for greater recognition of sport within the CJS. Beyond the need for change in the criminal justice system, it's also clear that much still needs to be done to provide access to facilities, provisions of the right equipment, and recruitment of coaches. I was interested in the point that Baroness Taylor has just made about equipment. 40 years ago, as an MP, I remember being approached by a young female constituent telling me that access to sports bars was a deterrent to girls playing sport. And as Baroness Taylor said, earlier this week, there was a report calling for more comfortable and practical sports bras, shorts and hijabs, as well as boots and other equipment, specifically designed for the needs of women and girls and their bodies. So, as she said, there's still work to be done at that level. Although time has prevented me from paying full tribute to the way skills and opportunities of women in sport has exploded onto the public consciousness, let me do so now and hope that we will enjoy more success in all sports and at all levels in the years ahead, and celebrate, as the motion asks us, the success of our women's teams and put forward practical measures to underpin that success in the future.
Lord, I'd like to express my pride in both the Lionesses and in England's women who'd put on such a gutsy performance in the World Championship, losing by such a small margin against New Zealand. As Noble Lord Addington said in his excellent opening remarks, during their teenage years, girls drop out of sport at 3 times the rate of boys. Yet girls need load-bearing exercise even more than boys during those years. It's the best time to build bone density, helping protect us from osteoporosis later in life. The push from our sports councils to get more females into exercising and keep us there isn't just a social move towards some sort of sporting equality. It's important for our health and well-being, including the impact on the NHS budget. Football is the most popular team sport in the UK, with millions of people playing regularly. It's a gender-affected activity, in the words of the Equality Act, meaning that mixed-sex play would not be fair for females because males are stronger and faster, even when they're the same size. From age 12, boys and girls play separately in order to give females fair and safe play. Even in primary schools, it's common to have girls' teams and boys' teams. A 10-year-old girl will tell you that the boys won't pass to girls and that she prefers playing with other girls because boys are too rough. The effects of male puberty are clear: more muscle, bigger heart and lung capacity, denser bones, stiffer tendons, and the rest. In the school playground or in the park, you'll see boys, not girls, having an impromptu football game. The result: for every female playing football in the UK, there are 9 males. That's almost a whole team. If football is to become a girls' game too, it's obvious that girls and young women need their own teams. They also need role models. After the success of the England women, girls can see that they can be female and sporty, and this can be life-changing. Here's the problem. Since 2015, the Football Association has had a policy that males may play in women's teams if they lower their testosterone, or in some cases, even if they don't. Lowering testosterone will slow them down a little, but it does not reverse male puberty, and it certainly doesn't remove male performance advantage in sport. An average male runs 10% faster than an average female. In a dash to the ball, he only needs to be half a metre in front every time, and she'll never get a touch. Up to the age of 18, even that requirement is absent. The FA's current policy says under 18s may play in the team of their reassigned affirmed agenda. So although talented girls can be forced to drop out of boys' teams after the age of 11, boys who say that they are girls inside get to join a girls' team. This year, the England's University's women's football squad has a trans-identifying male player, a 30-something, 6-foot-tall, post-pubertal male who now identifies as a woman. In goal, where size advantage really counts. If you had to play them, you would want a trans-identifying male player in your women's team too, wouldn't you, to level the playing field a little? Last autumn, the UK's Sports Council Equality Group published new guidance on transgender inclusion in sport. They said that the inclusion of trans-identifying male in female sport could not be balanced with fairness and, in many cases, safety for females. This summer, England and Welsh rugby reinstated female-only teams, though Scottish rugby has yet to follow. But football is not there yet. Women's football was huge in the early 20th century, but was outlawed by the FA in 1921 and remained so for 50 years. Now, once again, women's football has a chance. Let's hope the FA won't hand it to the boys this time.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank Lord Addington and also Lord Harlech for today's debate. And I'd like to draw your attention to my register of interest. I have many connections in sport. There is indeed a lot to celebrate. 10 years ago, the London Olympics and Paralympics became known as the Women's Games because of the success of British athletes. And this summer, I've loved the Euros, the Rugby Union and the Rugby League. It has been incredible. Women's sport is on the rise. But we are not there yet. It still feels that we're at the beginning of a journey, and we have to be careful about the next steps we take, what we might consider giving away, and not be complacent about the future. The organisation Women in Sport have said about the recent successes, and I quote, "They're built on shaky foundations with stubborn inequalities, stereotypes and practical barriers, which may be different at each stage of life, disrupting many women and girls' experiences of sport." Over the years, many misogynistic men have told me that women don't play sport because apparently they don't like it. Turning it around, they are hopefully starting to realise that, yes, we do like playing sport and we're quite good at it, but there is still so much more that we have to do. Recently, I was part of a conversation where someone tried to tell me that when women's sports has made it, when top coaches, they meant men, decide they want to coach women. Now, let me be clear, I am not against men coaching women. 3 out of my 4 coaches are men. I know incredible men in sport. But the inference that we're only actually good at sport when men decide we are is just a little bit irritating. There's not enough time to go into that particular debate. But we have to keep looking and checking. Where are the women coaches, the administrators, the volunteers? What opportunities are we going to give to women athletes? What platform do we give them? Sport matters, and women must be part of the discussion about the future. In the US, Title IX prohibits sex-based discrimination, and I've long believed that we need that in the UK, perhaps now more than ever, not just to keep investing in success, but to make sure that we have the right opportunities. And also in the US recently, the NCAA rules have changed, which have benefited some women who've now been able to sell their name, image and likeness to great financial reward. And it's probably seen at the moment as a non-traditional form of endorsement. It does give some power to women, but not all women can do this or want to do this. So in sport, women are catching up. In the marathon, women were only allowed to compete at the Olympics in 1984. The pole vault was 2000. There's plenty more sports that I could add in. But we have an opportunity right now to not just turn from celebrating success, but to turn the tide of inactivity. So what do we need to do? We have to stop sexualising the uniforms that women are required to wear, or at least give them a choice. We need to listen to what women want in sport. We need to tackle the inequalities of sponsorship, media coverage and grassroots. Back to women in sport again. They say that 4 in 10 girls feel women's sport is still viewed as a lower value than men's sport, and that girls are not expected to be good at sport. Over 1/3 of parents of girls, 37%, think that girls are not encouraged to do sport and physical activity as much as boys. My lords, I believe that you have to see it to believe it. This summer, we have seen the success of women's sport in spades. It has been incredible. There is a lot to celebrate. But now we have to do much more to widen the opportunity and ensure that we have future success.
My Lord, I congratulate, like others, the noble Lord, Lord Addington, on securing this short debate and on his excellent speech. Many national women's teams of the United Kingdom have cause to celebrate a fine year. To name a few, as we've heard, gold medals have been won at the Commonwealth Games by the England women's hockey team, by the GB women's rowing crews at the European Championships. In rugby union, the Red Roses were unlucky to lose narrowly against the All Blacks. English women were also runners-up in the Cricket World Cup. Above all, of course, we celebrate the magnificent victory of the Lionesses. That was great for women's sport. It brought in a large audience, it has raised the sport's profile, it has attracted many new players. So it is important that we celebrate and that government now builds on that enthusiasm generated to promote sport for girls and women equally with boys and men. Champions attract newcomers. From the mass of young participants come future champions. With them, we will have future successes. It must and can be a virtuous circle. Government must nurture young sportswomen. It is good for society if we all exercise and participate with greater or less success in sports. Teams are valuable for the less gifted participants. Many children love sport if encouraged and given the chance. Many of them just want to be in a team, even the 3rd or 4th team, and that applies, as I know, to girls and boys alike. And team sports promote loyalty and friendship. To be a team player is a compliment we give people in life. Society wins from more involvement in sport. So but too many girls do not play sport in their teenage years. The reasons are complex, but puberty, changing body shapes, cause difficulties. There is embarrassment in changing rooms. So wherever possible, there must be single-sex changing facilities. They should not have to share facilities with boys or later with men. Nor should they be deterred by faster and stronger trans women in direct competition. It is simply not fair for a taller, well-built, natal male with artificially lowered testosterone levels to play contact sports with girls or women. It's not just unfair, it carries increased risk of serious injury. It's not a level playing field. So inclusivity must not mean being unfair to females, who, after all, are half our population. Being kind to trans women does not justify invading the dignity of the female sex or putting them at a physical disadvantage. Sensitivity to female needs and fairness to females must come first. Sport for women should result in happy and confident persons. If we drive proper sport for females forward, we shall have more champions to cheer. So let us celebrate, build on the success we've had, and drive women's team sports to still greater heights. Let government now show that they believe women and girls are the equal of the men.
I too would like to congratulate my noble friend Lord Addington on this securing this excellent debate and thanking him for highlighting and celebrating women's team sport. I would also just like to thank Lord McNally for his kind words and for raising a very important issue and for all the work he has done in promoting sport and physical activity at the YJB, and also his continued support with the APPG, and thank you. As others have mentioned, there has been huge progress in the last few years in bringing women's sport to national attention, most notably through the fantastic achievements of the Lionesses winning the Euros earlier this year. We've also seen in recent days and weeks with the GB tennis team making the semi-finals of the Billie Jean King Cup for the first time in 41 years, and England women making it all the way to the final of the Rugby World Cup too. A wide variety of women's team sports are clearly on the rise and getting more exposure in the media, and what fantastic role models they are. My lords, we must maintain this focus of women's sport and build upon the progress and success we've seen. It is vital that we continue to strive for greater equality and opportunity in sport, and we have an amazing opportunity to help inspire the next generation of sportswomen by teaching girls in schools the right skills, strategies, from an early age. We know there remains more work to be done on this agenda, as according to the Women in Sport report published earlier this year, girls are not only less physically active generally than boys, but are also far less likely to take part in team sports, 55% for girls playing team sports compared to 71% of boys. Schools have an important role to play along the journey in achieving national successes. So we know many schools are delivering excellent sporting facilities, but I'm afraid this is not the case in all schools, whether it's down to a lack of workforce, facilities, or equipment. And we all know the knock-on effects of what better physical health and well-being can have on mental health and helping our children with their learning in schools. According to the Association of Physical Education, the difference that high-quality physical education, sport, school sport, and physical activity can make to the lives of young people is quite remarkable. Improved behaviour and attitudes, building confidence, social skills, personal development, and much more. With all the successes of national women's sports and the increased demand in recent years, perhaps we should consider modifying and adapting the curriculum so that we can build on this success. We must always listen to the voices of girls. They are not a homogeneous group. They have different attitudes towards sports, and we must recognise this to help inspire more girls to get active. It should, of course, not come at the expense of individual sports and other activities, which is why we need to provide a broad and balanced offer. Sport and physical activity should be a must-have, not a nice-to-have. And one way to embed more focus on sport and physical activity, including encouraging more girls to play sport and give them more opportunity to play team sports, would be to classify PE as a core subject. Does my noble friend the Minister agree that this would give PE a higher priority and focus in schools? I do agree with Lord Addington in his comments around clubs and that pathway between schools and clubs. Sport does not stop at the school gate, and I think we must ensure that we give the sport and strengthen the relationships between schools and local clubs so that we can help more girls on their journey to become elite sportswomen. My lords, I have no doubt that on the back of the successes we have seen across a wide variety of women's sports on the national stage in recent years, there will be increased demand for more girls to play more sports in schools. We have an opportunity here to unleash the full potential of women in sport in this country. We must seize it.
Excellent.
Apologies, my lords. I'd like to, first of all, of course, congratulate my noble friend, Lord Addington, for securing this debate. It's a really important debate, and I'd just like to tell you a story about my first serious engagement with women in sport when, as a newly elected MP for Solihull, I was invited to see a women's rugby match at a local constituency club called Camp Hill. Warmly wrapped up, I stood on the try line nearest the bar, ready to cheer the Camp Hill Chargers on, but not really expecting to find women's rugby a very serious endeavour. How wrong I was. It wasn't handbags, I can tell you that, my lords. Indeed, in order to prevent a try being scored, a charger threw herself on top of the ball so no opposition player could get to it, winded herself, took off her scrum cap, had a little sick, put the cap back on and ran back onto the pitch. So I began to appreciate that women's sport is, to women, an incredibly serious matter. That game was in 2005, a time when women's sport was grossly undervalued, both in the attention it received in the media and the financial support that it was given. But these days, the popularity of women's sport is huge, and it's growing at different rates right the way across the board. Only days ago, the Red Roses reached the final of the Rugby World Cup in New Zealand. And New Zealand, as we know, won, playing on home turf. Britain's rugby union chief executive, Bill Sweeney, agreed that the nail-biting finish was probably more entertaining than the men's game. But success attracts investment in this rugby final, and attracted the largest crowds ever for the rugby game. But my lords, is the real win the benefits it brings to those who take part? Many groups have been raised by noble lords this afternoon for inclusion. Minorities, sports participation for those in the Criminal Justice Bill, my noble friend Lord McNally, inclusion of all kinds. But several noble lords have also taken the opportunity to raise the trans issue, and perhaps this is an important issue and we should maybe have a further debate down for another day. My noble friend Lord Addington queries the value of what the government is doing to celebrate the success of these fantastic teams. Why did the Lionesses not get invited to a formal reception at number 10? And while I appreciate that there have been one or two other small things on the government's plate of late, it's a simple thing, my lords, to recognise our women's success. It doesn't cost a lot, it creates good publicity, it improves public morale, which we could certainly do with at the moment, and shows that, even though we can mess up the economy in 6 days, we are good at something. And that, my lords, should be recognised and celebrated.
Yeah. My lords, I too congratulate Lord Addington for bringing this debate to us today. He's got a habit of enriching the chamber with his knowledge of sport, particularly rugby, and I congratulate him for all that he does to promote that. It's right that we celebrate the achievement of our national women's sporting legends, but, my lords, we need to do much more than that. We should celebrate those that have led the way in opening up sport generally, so that women so long excluded can feel welcomed and able to play competitive sports on equal terms with their male counterparts. We have, as all speakers acknowledge, much to celebrate and even more to look forward to, but it is just worth reminding ourselves of the journey women in sport have been on. I tell a story which I hope illustrates the point. Back in 2000, when I was a minister in the Home Office, I was travelling home late in a ministerial car and had a new and rather sparky temporary driver. As you do, we fell into a conversation about football, and within a few minutes, my driver explained that she played for one of the women's top clubs and had played for Doncaster Bells, Arsenal Ladies and Croydon Women in recent seasons. She also told me she was England's centre forward. I remarked, well, there's clearly something wrong here. I should be driving you. Imagine, my lords, the noble Lord Parkinson being driven home by Harry Kane. Well, that's how it felt. We then embarked on a conversation in which it was explained to me just how hard it was for women footballers to perform at the highest level, to train, to get time off for games. They had to plead with their employers, who were often wholly unsympathetic and opposed to helping the women's game. Senior women footballers of that era truly were pioneers to whom the current generation of England and women's Premier League players are grateful. Many were just paid boot money. Now, much has changed in the world of football for the better for women players, but there remains much more to do. The marketing of the game, clubs giving greater exposure to the women's game in their stadia, pay levels in the professional leagues, the transfer market, the treatment of the game in the media in particular. In schools, its governance and the encouragement of the grassroots, as Baroness Taylor explained to us, all need to have work done on them before we can get anywhere near parity with the men's game. And I remind your lords today that the highest transfer fee for a woman footballer is just £350,000 paid back in September of this year. Women, despite their incredible drawing power, as illustrated by the Euros, are still undervalued. My lords, women are powering ahead as winners in UK sport in football, cricket, rugby league, athletics, tennis, gymnastics, cycling, curling, rowing, and a whole range of Olympic and Paralympic sports and much more. Our sports bodies and organisations are doing much good work in opening up opportunities, making sport more inclusive. For the long term, we need to do more to ensure we protect our sporting heritage with secured funding, investment in schools, facilities, playing fields and open spaces, much missed in the last few years. We need to challenge unconscious bias and ensure that the culture surrounding women in sport is right and appropriate by ensuring we raise standards in the world of sports administration. My lords, much to celebrate, but as Baroness Tanigray-Thompson said, much more to do. Let's learn from our wins and our defeats, celebrate today our women's achievements and ensure that future generations build on that legacy.
My Lords, like other Noble Lords, I would like to thank the Noble Lord Lord Addington for securing this important debate on the success of women's sport. The timing is, as Noble Lords have noted, particularly apt with so much success occurring across women's sport, not least the success of England's Red Roses, reaching the final at the Women's Rugby World Cup last weekend and coming so tantalisingly close to winning the tournament, and the Lionesses at this summer's Euros. I'm very happy to be responding to this question for the short debate at such an exciting time, and want to assure Noble Lords that His Majesty's Government is keen to build on this success and momentum to create a lasting legacy for women's sport. The Government is fully committed to supporting women's sport at every opportunity, pushing for greater participation, employment, commercial opportunities, visibility, a point that the Noble Lord, Lord Addington accentuated, and opportunities at school. And it's important that we take the time to recognise and celebrate success, which is why today's debate is so important as well as so timely. This summer we witnessed a major success in women's sport as the Lionesses beat the German team at Wembley to lift the UEFA European Championship trophy. This inspirational tournament was staged in July across England, from Rotherham and Wigan to Southampton and Brighton. As Noble Lords have noted, the final at Wembley was attended by a record crowd of over 87,000 people. Not only a record for women's international in Europe, it broke new ground for a women's or men's Euros final tournament game. The tournament also became the most watched Women's Euros ever, with a global cumulative live viewership of 365 million people across television, out-of-home viewing and streaming. This massive figure is more than double the number that watched the last UEFA Women's Championship in the Netherlands in 2017. The tournament was a truly groundbreaking moment for the sport and has dramatically boosted interest in the women's game, bringing it to the forefront of people's minds. And the event held for the Lionesses in Trafalgar Square the day after the final was a momentous occasion and saw 7,000 fans celebrate with their heroes. My right honourable friend, the Secretary of State, and the former Prime Minister, Liz Truss, met the Lionesses at their training ground to congratulate them and were very proud to support the event in Trafalgar Square. But as the Noble Lady Baroness Taylor of Bolton says, it's also important that we focus on the long-term legacy by way of celebration, and to commemorate their already incredible achievement, we're working with the Football Foundation and the FA to name sites after the players in towns and cities which shaped their careers, and we hope that that will inspire many generations of more players. We also continue to invest in grassroots sport to bring on the next generation of Lionesses. We know how valuable physical education at school is. It gives pupils an opportunity to excel, to be active and to lead healthy lives. My noble friend Lady Jenkin of Kennington talked about the importance for bone density in preventing diseases like osteoporosis. That's why we're working with the Department for Education to understand the barriers that prevent the ambition of 2 hours of PE a week being achieved. We'll also continue to work with the Department for Education to ensure that girls have equal access to sports. There's more work for us to do to identify and to address the different barriers to participation that exist for young people, and we've heard about some of those again in today's short debate. We'll continue to adopt a more targeted approach as part of our new sports strategy. Alongside this, the Department for Education is working on updating the School Sport and Activity Action Plan, which will set out steps to improve PE teaching in primary schools and to help schools make better use of their sports facilities. On facilities, my noble friend Lord Sandhurst spoke about the importance of single-sex changing facilities. The government is committed to maintaining the safeguards which allow organisations to provide single-sex services, and we don't plan to announce any changes to the law. Aside from the Women's Euros, there are a number of other recent examples of success in women's sport. Over the last week, we've seen the England Red Roses reach the final of this year's Women's Rugby World Cup, as well as the other Lionesses, as the Noble Lord Addington put it, reached the semi-final of the Rugby League World Cup, and the Great Britain team reached the semi-finals of the Billie Jean King Cup for the first time, as my noble friend Lady Sater said, in 41 years. Great Britain's women also recently won 3 medals at the recent Gymnastic World Championships in Liverpool. Jessica Gadarova claimed an historic floor gold medal for Great Britain on the final day and sealed Great Britain's first ever women's all-round World Gymnastics Championship medal with bronze in Liverpool. This year's Commonwealth Games also highlighted the success of women's sport, with Eilish McColgan's outstanding performance in the 10,000 metres, to give just one example. And 173,000 spectators attended the T20 women's cricket at Edgbaston, a record for women's cricket. It goes without saying that Emma Raducanu's win at the US Open in 2021 truly inspired the nation as well. A peak audience of 9.2 million people tuned into the match on Channel 4, including 48% of 16 to 34-year-olds. The UK's honours system can provide a way of recognising stellar sporting achievements and moments of national celebration. Examples of this include the MBEs awarded to the GB women's hockey team, who won gold at the Rio Olympic Games in 2016, and the Damehood awarded to Dame Laura Kenny as a result of her becoming the most successful female cyclist in Olympic history following her performance at the Tokyo Games in 2020.
The fact of the matter is we have given out awards, honours, to every member in a team. If you're only giving out 2, the only team you're ever going to honour is beach volleyball. Can we do something about it?
I take the point which the noble Lord raises, and of course the honour system is independent of government, but the points he make will be well heard and I'm sure fed back to those that sit on the independent committees. All of those sportswomen, whether honoured yet or not, are inspiring the next generation to follow their dreams. And we're looking forward to this momentum being maintained and built on with the Rugby League World Cup final this weekend, the ICC Women's T20 World Cup in South Africa, the FIFA Women's World Cup in Australia and New Zealand, the Netball World Cup in South Africa and the Solheim Cup in Spain. And I'm sure all noble lords will want to send our best wishes to the mixed England team, who are in the finals of the Wheelchair Rugby League World Cup tomorrow. So as noble lords can see, there's much to celebrate in women's sport, but it's not enough that we celebrate these successes. We must continue our hard work in ensuring that they continue for decades to come. We're doing this by investing £230 million between 2021 and 2025 to improve grassroots facilities across the UK. In addition, after Emma Raducanu's spectacular win, we put just under £22 million into tennis court facilities. We'll also look to continue our world-leading reputation for hosting major and mega sporting events and bringing all those special moments, like the Lionesses' victory, to the United Kingdom. Major events make people feel good in a way unlike others, and it's right that we should all have the opportunity to witness at first hand the success of our brilliant athletes, men and women. With this in mind, we've got to continue to build our pipeline of sporting events so that we can inspire more people across the country to watch, participate in or volunteer in sport, putting emphasis on the need for events to consider their social impact and legacy at the early bidding stage to maximise the benefits after conclusion. It's worth highlighting in that regard that we successfully won the bid to host the Women's Rugby World Cup in 2025 in May this year, and I pay tribute to my noble friend Lord Hayward for securing the financial commitment from the government for that, and pass on via him my congratulations to the King's Cross Steelers for their victory in the Bingham Cup. Hosting the Women's Rugby World Cup in 2025 and delivering the Legacy programme will generate transformational social impacts across rugby fans and more widely, including in the towns and cities which play host. And the Legacy programme will look to focus on access to rugby for women and girls across the country. And the 2026 ICC Women's T20 World Cup was announced as being awarded to England and Wales in July this year, another important opportunity. That will further boost the ECB's strategy to make cricket a gender-balanced sport. The UK has also won the bid to host the International Working Group on Women and Sport from this year until 2026, another great opportunity not only to share the fantastic work that we're doing, but also to learn from other countries. So there's no doubt that the visibility of women's sport is continuing to grow. This was boosted earlier this year when we added the FIFA Women's World Cup and the UEFA Women's European Championships to the listed events regime, meaning both tournaments will remain available for free-to-air television broadcasters and the biggest audiences. We want to continue to build on recent successes such as the Women's Euros and the good work already being done to encourage more women and girls to participate in sport and physical activity. We need to look ahead and be prepared to take advantage of these opportunities and find ways to overcome challenges such as have been outlined in today's debate. And we need to keep talking about issues relating to women in sport, asking questions and pushing ourselves to do more so that women can continue to be in the driving seat of our national supporting success and not just of the government car service. So I'm very grateful to the Noble Lord, Lord Addington, for today's debate and for all the Noble Lords who've participated in it.